Unveiling the Sinister Secrets, 7 Strange Rules of the Haunted Movie Theater in Ohio. The old Crown Theater loomed over Ash Grove like a corpse draped in shadows, its cracked marquee whispering of flickering lights and choking smoke. They said no one ever left the same. Tales of unsolved disappearances swirled among the locals, feeding the nightmares of children and grown-ups alike. Jennifer, a dedicated single mother, felt the icy fingers of fear curling around her heart every time her son Tommy mentioned the theater. "Don't go near there, please," she pleaded, but his wide eyes lit up with curiosity, chasing the shadows of forgotten horror. Tommy, just 11, was fearless. He thrived on the spine-chilling tales of the past, the haunted girl who vanished without a trace, the chilling laughter echoing in the empty halls. One fateful night, as Jennifer battled exhaustion after her shift at the convenience store, Tommy burst into their dimly lit home. "Mom! Me and my friends want to explore the theater. We'll be careful." The words danced on his lips like a dare, propelling a jolt of apprehension through Jennifer's veins. "No, Tommy. That place is dangerous." It didn't matter. The moment her back turned, he was gone, slipping into the silent night, drawn by the weight of the stories that twisted through Ash Grove's history. Panic surged as she checked the clock. Midnight. Heart racing, she grabbed a flashlight and stormed out, darkness swallowing her whole. Each step echoed eerily, and the cold air bit at her skin like a rabid beast. As she approached the Crown Theater, her light flickered against the peeling paint, illuminating a path of decay. It was more daunting than she had imagined, every creak underfoot sounding like a scream from the depths of time. Panic rose within her as her breath hitched, and impending dread draped over her like a fog. Shadows flitted in her peripheral vision, whispering secret truths of danger. She called out Tommy's name, voice trembling against the hollow silence. Inside, the air thickened, saturated with despair and regrets better left undisturbed. As she navigated through the rotting seats, the sense of despair suffocated her. It was like walking through a graveyard of broken dreams. The theater held its breath, waiting, listening, as if it were alive. Instead of escape, she felt a tightening around her, a presence, something sinister lurking in the gloom. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting a ghostly glow, and there it was, a ghastly silhouette that promised doom. Her heart pounded fiercely, like a war drum in her chest. Just then, she heard it, a child's laugh, high-pitched and twisted, weaving through the stillness. It was Tommy's voice, calling out from deep within the shadows. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The moment stretched, fear wrapping tighter around her. This wasn't just a haunted theater, this was a monster, hungry and waiting. Panic surged through her veins as she stepped deeper into the darkness, wondering if she would become just another whisper in this cursed place. Could she save her son from whatever evil awaited them within these walls? Or would she too become a name forgotten in the depths of the Crown Theater, lost forever? Jennifer's heart raced as she breathed in the musty air, a mix of fear and determination propelling her forward. "Tommy!" she called out again, her voice trembling. Shadows flickered and danced on the walls, ignited by the errant light from her flashlight. Each step felt heavier than the last, like she was trudging through some intangible swamp of dread. Then came that laugh again, high-pitched, twinkling, an echo of innocence twisted into something grotesque. It seemed to bounce off the bloody red walls, pulling her deeper. "Tommy!" she shot back, panic striking her like a punch to the gut. No answer. Just the laughter, ringing through the dark, haunting like a siren's call. She moved cautiously, wary of the cracked floors, feeling every splinter beneath her feet. There was a power in the silence that whispered secrets of suffering, of lives turned to ash within these walls. Fear gripped her throat. She needed to find him. She couldn't face the possibility of being alone in this nightmare. Further in, the lights flickered violently. Images ghosted across the screen suspended above her, projecting memories of laughter and joy, starkly contrasting reality's icy grip. Horrific stories of children lured to their doom played like a reel stuck on repeat. Each frame burned in her mind. Were these the souls trapped forever, seeking a release only through new victims? The laughter returned again, sharper this time, as if it were mocking her attempts to reach her son. "Mom, I'm down here." The voice was muffled, soaked in false cheer, drawing Jennifer toward a shattered doorway marked with indecipherable words. She hesitated, dread pulling her back even as hope tugged at her heart. Then came the unmistakable sound of a door creaking open somewhere behind her. She spun, flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. Nothing. The theater breathed in, a sinister lull that amplified the pounding of her heart. "Tommy!" She shouted again, not willing to let fear chain her. Her voice felt weak against the ever-tightening darkness. She pushed through the doorway, hurling herself into an uneven hallway strewn with old movie posters, torn and faded. The air felt different here, colder, heavier, like a womb of despair. "Mom, over here." His voice was clearer, filled with an urgency that mortified her. She sprinted blindly toward it, her pulse thundering in her ears. As she rounded a corner, the flashlight flickered, sputtering as if sensing the encroaching evil. In the faint glow, she saw him, Tommy, standing at the edge of a crumbling archway, face illuminated in the half-light. But behind him, shadowy figures pooled like ink at the edges of the room. They shifted with ghastly grin, their sunken eyes melding with the darkness, seeking to devour her son. The sight sent ice curling in her gut. "Don't move!" she shrieked, urgency twisting her voice. "Get back!" He turned, eyes wide as he looked back at her. She moved closer, fighting against the fear that rooted her to the spot. "Come on, Tommy. Now!" But as she reached for him, the shadows surged, arms stretching, fingers clawing, reaching for the boy. A deafening silence enveloped them, a moment suspended in dread, as if the world had stopped. Then the floor beneath them trembled, a low growl rumbling that sent a wave of terror surging through her. "Mom, it's so dark!" he cried out, terror lacing every syllable. Jennifer could feel it, the grip of something powerful and wicked, twisting and tightening. Time shattered. Just as she lunged for him, a piercing scream shattered the gloom, a sound that didn't come from Tommy. What waited in that darkness now pressed closer, eager for its next victim? What horrors would Jennifer face in the jaws of the Crown Theater, and what price would she pay to save Tommy? The shadows writhed, pulling in closer, a melding mass of anger and want. Jennifer's heart pounded louder as desperation clawed at her throat. She refused to lose him. "Tommy!" She screamed again, launching herself forward as the cold fingers of shadow flicked past her face like a taunt. Fear morphed into a frenzy, snapping her into action. She could see his terrified expression, the innocence of childhood fighting against an ancient, hungry darkness. "Run, Tommy! Please!" But the moment the words left her lips, she felt the theater shift. The room vibrated, walls trembling as if the building itself was alive, agonizing over some forgotten grief. A hollow creaking noise echoed, growing louder, drowning out her pleas. The shadows thickened, billowing into grotesque forms that danced at the edge of her vision. Each flicker of the flashlight revealed glimpses of small faces twisted into eternal anguish. They reached for Tommy, faces swirling in darkness and despair, demanding to be freed. Then, something shifted, a figure moved through the blackness, slow and deliberate. It was more solid than the shadows around it, an outline barely illuminated by her fading beam. The face was obscured, but malice radiated from it, every heartbeat intensifying as it advanced toward them. "Tommy, move!" Jennifer lunged but slipped on the damp floor, gripping the edge of the wall to steady herself. The figure paused, and for a moment, they locked eyes. Hope flared bright and fierce within her before it chilled again. Tommy shuffled backward instinctively, but he was rooted to the spot, the shadows whispering promises of safety in his ears. "Mom. I'm scared." The figure lunged. "No." Jennifer screamed. Her pulse raced like a freight train, drowning everything else as she launched herself once more, springing into the collapsing void in a desperate attempt to grab her son, but the shadows closed in a tidal wave of darkness, merging into an all-consuming maw, ready to swallow them whole. Just a moment away from her son, the edges of the room blurred, blinding her with darkness, displacing her sense of direction. "No. Help!" she cried, panic twisting her insides. As if mocking her, the high-pitched laughter erupted again, intertwining with the heavy whispering from the dark, and then, in that freezing moment, the whispers harmonized, echoing a child's song. "Come play with us, join us, forever." The floor bucked beneath her like a living beast, a low growl matching her thunderous heartbeat. Desperation clawed at her soul as she reached out one last time, her hand grasping at the chill in the air. Then the darkness exploded, light flooded the room, a sickly green shine erupted, illuminating the figures trapped in the shadows. She stumbled backward, blinded. In that fleeting light, she saw flashes of the classic movie stars trapped in twisted versions of their former selves, unable to escape their fame, their smiles replaced with horror, and there, amidst the chaos, she spotted an exit, a rusty door, slightly ajar. A sliver of light peeked through, beckoning. Jennifer's motherly instincts surged. "Tommy! To the door!" But just as she shouted, the figures lunged again, their mouths widening in silent screams. The light sputtered, and Tommy's face turned pale, gripped with terror, caught in the clash of light and darkness. Now it was her turn to fight. Jaws of the theater and the grasping hands surged between them, and she realized something terrifying. One of them was ready. It was hungry. With newfound determination, she clutched her flashlight and charged, eyes fixed on her son. But as she neared him, another scream ripped through the air. The darkness was no longer just an enemy, it was calling, beckoning with promises of secrets too terrible to bear. A chilling thought struck her. What if behind that laughter lay a truth about the theater? About what happened to children who entered? And just as quickly, the darkness welcomed her in, pulling her into the depths of the horror, cascading them both into the waiting shadows. Would they find the strength to escape this nightmare? Or was the theater ready to add 2 more souls to its ghastly collection? The darkness swallowed them whole, a suffocating embrace that twisted and pulled at their very essence. Jennifer felt herself falling, tumbling through an abyss that buzzed with the echo of laughter, high-pitched and mocking. Around her, the shadows formed a cacophony of whispers, converging in a language she couldn't comprehend but instinctively understood. It was a call, a siren's song desperate to ensnare them. "Tommy!" The word escaped her mouth, barely a breath. She thrashed, fighting against the inky blackness. Panic surged inside her heart, overwhelming everything. She could sense Tommy nearby, the light of his innocence flickering like a candle fighting gale-force winds. Then, as abruptly as they had been drawn in, the shadows shifted, and they landed with a bone-jarring thud onto a cold, hard floor. Light flickered dimly above them, a flickering bulb hanging precariously from a cracked ceiling. Jennifer blinked away the haze, grappling with the reality they'd fallen into a warped projection room filled with torn posters, broken film reels, and the lingering scent of mildew. "Mom!" Tommy's voice trembled, and she turned, finding his wide, frightened eyes searching hers. "Where are we?" She swallowed hard, directing a fierce stare at the room around them. "We need to find a way out. Stick close to me." Their surroundings felt like a nightmare made corporeal. The walls pulsated with silent echoes, whispers of the long-gone audience that had once filled this theater, now a grotesque grave of lost souls. Shadows still clung to the edges, stretching toward them, greedy for their warmth. "Jennifer!" A voice croaked from the shadows. It was a familiar tone, one that clawed at her sanity. She turned rapidly, her heart halting as she recognized the face, one of the trapped movie stars, a sentimental figure from her childhood. Only this version was gaunt and hollow-eyed, mouth curled in a torment that was utterly bereft of joy. Why are you here? It rasped, a desperate urgency in its eyes. You must leave before it's too late. You don't belong in this darkness. What do you mean? Jennifer felt cold sweat trickle down her spine. She was aware time was short, but confusion clouded her thoughts. You've awakened it. The figure screamed, riffs of pain tearing through its voice. It hungers for the innocence it wants. The voice trailed off, and shadows snapped violently around, pulling the star back into the darkness that in that moment, fear turned to dread, sinking deep into her bones. She gripped Tommy's hand tighter. We need to find a way out. As they maneuvered through the decaying remnants of the theater, she caught pieces of conversations from trapped spirits struggling against the same fate. The rules obey the rules, a faint murmur drifted. 7 rules to survive. Jennifer's mind raced. What were the rules? What would happen if they didn't follow them? Without warning, the shadows surged like a storm, thickening and swirling, closing in from all sides. Tommy whimpered, and Jennifer felt her heart splinter as the darkness roared, echoing a hungry promise. Tommy, hold on tight. She pushed forward, fumbling through the debris of forgotten dreams, searching for a way to escape this tormenting maze. Suddenly, a thunderous crash resonated from above. A huge shadow loomed, and Jennifer's breath hitched in her throat. She looked up to find the ceiling buckling under its own weight, as if some unseen horror was awakening above them, eager to swallow them alive. Mom! What do we do? Tommy's voice quivered, pulling her focus. Just then, a jagged crack split the air, bathing them in a red light as the shadows roared with indignation. The laughter echoed again, louder this time, mocking like a sinister audience ready for the show to begin. Jennifer steeled herself, adrenaline surging. They couldn't linger in the shadows. They had to find those rules or risk being the next to vanish forever. Listen, Tommy. We're going to find that exit, and we're going to escape this nightmare. She could feel the shadows tugging at her heels, desperate to latch on. But before they could move, that chilling voice emerged once more, echoing around them. Do you want to play a game, little souls? There's no escaping your fate. The sensation of dread clawed at her throat. Time was running out, and the clock was ticking on their freedom. What were the rules? And why did it feel like they were quickly running out of lives? Jennifer's heart raced as she yanked Tommy's hand, pulling him towards the crumbling exit marked in peeling paint. Every second counted. The laughter curled around them, turning their urgency into thick panic. The shadows thickened, a suffocating cloud that blanketed their escape route. Stay close, she urged, forcing herself to sound brave. The dim light flickered, casting long, stretching shadows that danced ominously on the walls, as if alive and hostile. They dashed past rotting chairs and remnants of old popcorn crates. Yet the deeper they ventured into the theater, the more those whispers clawed at her mind. 7 rules to survive. Someone had called it out before, a memory buried beneath fear. But the rules remained elusive, darting away like phantoms in her mind. Mom! Tommy breathed, terror tightening his grip. What if they catch us? She turned to him, searching for strength in his young eyes. They won't. Not if we keep moving. But her voice wavered. The shadows loomed larger, greedy for the warmth they emitted. The echoes of despair grew louder. Obey the rules. These words vibrated off the walls, demanding her attention, vibrating against the ache in her chest. Then a door at the far end of the room creaked, a promise of escape in the distance. It was ajar, whispering hope. But as they sprinted towards it, laughter erupted again. This time, it was dark, cruel. Run! She screamed as they broke free from the theater's grip, pushing through the door. It led them into what felt like a forgotten hallway, the air cooler and staler than before. Yet still, something lurked in the corners, watching, waiting. Tommy pointed shakily at the walls. On both sides hung faded murals showing moments from old horror films, faces twisted in fear, eyes beaming dread. The smiles had vanished, replaced by hollow echoes of anguish. Look! Tommy gasped, his voice tinged with awe and fear. She followed his gaze, and her breath caught again as she spotted a gnarled, wooden door at the end, flaws etched into its surface like scars of forgotten pain. A nameplate dipped low, barely legible, the Room of Secrets. As they approached, an icy chill swept past them, rippling downward, conjuring whispers that flooded her mind. You're close, just 7 rules, find them before it's too late. What rules? She murmured, pressing against the door. It felt impossibly heavy beneath her fingertips, a pulsating heartbeat of dread. Mom, it feels wrong. Tommy tugged her sleeve, his body stiffening as the eerie laughter swelled around them, battering their resolve. No, we can't stop now. She pushed harder against the door until it creaked open, revealing an opulent room bathed in muted crimson and shadows. An old projector loomed in the corner, its light flickering like a dying star. What's that? Tommy whispered, eyes wide, a reflection of the drama unfolding. Jennifer stepped inside, drawn toward the flickering light. Each image was a scene from bygone terror, a sacrifice here, a scream there. A bell tolled softly, echoing in the room. The floor crackled beneath her as the air thickened, suffocating hope. Listen, Tommy, she breathed, heart hammering against her ribs. We can't let it consume us. We need to find the rules. They might tell us how to survive. Just then, the projector whirred to life, casting shimmering shadows onto the walls. The movie had begun, and she felt the weight of countless souls trapped within. Help us remember, one ghostly voice echoed, a plea pulling at her heart. Jennifer's resolve twisted. She took a deep breath, her skin crawling with anticipation. We can break the cycle. We can end this. Suddenly, from the darkness of the shadows, a voice emerged, sultry and low. Playtime's begun, little souls. The first rule is the red light flickered ominously, bathing them in a nightmare they could no longer escape. What was the first rule? And would they be able to follow it before it was too late? The flickering light engulfed Jennifer and Tommy, casting spindly shadows that twisted like tendrils reaching to snatch them back into the darkness. Jennifer's breath caught again as the voice slid through her ears, echoing in both their minds. It felt as though the very walls whispered the words in sinister anticipation. First rule, it taunted, hanging in the air like a dark promise. You must not look away. The projector sputtered, images swirling faster now. They were no longer just scenes. They screamed reality, a face twisted in agony, a figure lurking behind a barely open door, shadows that lingered far too long before flicking away. Each image carved deeper into her soul, taunting her with the weight of their horror. Mom, what does it mean? Tommy's voice was thin, barely a tremor against the cacophony surrounding them. Her eyes remained glued to the screen, though every instinct screamed at her to turn away. I don't know, she managed, barely above a whisper. As if sensing her hesitation, the projector whirred and the laughter erupted once more, rolling off the walls like sickening waves. It penetrated her thoughts, gnawing at her confidence. Look into the truth. Find your fear. Every moment felt suspended as the shadows shifted, an almost palpable dread creeping across her skin. The irony of the room swirled in her mind. Having come here to escape, they were trapped in a cruel game. Tommy squeezed her hand tighter, his knuckles white. Mom, I can't take this. Suddenly, without thought, she yanked her gaze away from the screen, snapping her head to meet her son's terrified eyes. We can't look away, Tommy. We have to remember the rule. But even as she spoke, her own heart pounded against her chest, screaming for her to flee this cursed chamber. The walls pulsed with a life of their own, drawing them back into the horrors projected mercilessly. Then, the murky shadows thickened, swirling around the room like a cyclone, honing in on their bodies. The once familiar faces of the film now morphed into twisted reflections of their own fear, a depiction of Jennifer as she screamed, a frame of Tommy crying, hands pressed against his ears, begging for silence. Mom! Tommy cried, clawing desperately at the air, as if trying to break free from the tightening grasp of darkness. Almost instinctively, she spun to face him, bracing herself. "Don't look away," she yelled, even as dread threatened to pull her under. "We'll find the rest of the rules. We can make it through this." The shadows receded for a brief moment, as though her defiance had momentarily caught their attention. With a flicker, the screen changed again, displaying a new scene, a door marked with numbers, a countdown ticking down ominously. 5-4, it echoed menacingly. "What is going to happen?" Tommy whimpered, trembling beneath the weight of the unseen terror. "Just hold on to me," Jennifer shouted, feeling the pull of despair tighten in her chest. She felt exposed, inching closer to a precipice, the depth of fear giving way to desperation. Another flash of agony danced across the screen, and the countdown continued. Her instincts screamed to run, yet the perverse obligation to fight this terror bound her feet to the ground. Then came a final chilling laugh, vibrating through the very bones of the room. "Here's the second rule," the voice curled like smoke around them, "only one can survive. Choose wisely." Suddenly the images morphed again, two pathways revealing themselves, one marked with creeping vines of agony, the other shrouded in darkness and stillness. A choice loomed, prickling at her skin, and she felt the walls beckoning her toward an uncertain doom. She glanced at Tommy, terror overshadowing her resolve. "We need to decide, Tommy. Which path?" But as his eyes darted between the choices, the laughter erupted once more, drowning out her thoughts, a harrowing reminder that time was slipping away. What would they choose? And in the end, who would the shadows claim? A hush fell over the room, thick and suffocating, as Jennifer stared at the looming doorways, both seemingly alive with unseen horrors. Time ticked away relentlessly, the countdown reverberating in her bones. "Mom!" Tommy pleaded, his voice fragile with dread. "I can't do this." "Choose," demanded the voice from the shadows, a mocking tone dancing on the edge of madness. "Which one will you venture? The vines? The dark?" The vines twisted grotesquely, winding like snakes, their thorns glistening with the unshed tears of the damned. The other path swallowed light whole, the void beckoning with a silence that felt heavy enough to crush them. "We have to go, Tommy. The longer we wait." But the moment froze, the countdown becoming a shriek in her mind. 3, 2, Mom, take my hand. Tommy yanked her back to him. The frantic terror in his face was a mirror of her own. "I can't let you go in there alone." "Then we choose together," she breathed, eyes darting back to the vines. "Maybe they lead us out." Before either could reconsider, she stepped toward the path entwined in thorns and agony. Scraps of cries echoed from within, drawing them further into the heart of darkness. With a determined squeeze of her hand, they pressed forward into the unknown. As they crossed the threshold, a chilling wind swept forth, slicing through the clammy air. The shadows lunged closer, and every heartbeat synchronized with a low growl from the depths. The pulse of the unseen threat felt like an electric shock, picking up speed, pushing them to the edge of reason. "Mom, I don't want to be here." Tommy gasped, the tears spilling down his cheeks. "Stay close," Jennifer urged, her voice cracking, fear resonating in each syllable. They trudged through the oppressive dark, the vines scratching hungrily at their skin. Is this a trap?" Tommy whimpered, choking back a sob. "No. We can get through this," she insisted, but her voice faltered. Then, from the blackness, silhouettes emerged, pale faces contorting in anguish, their mouths frozen in silent screams. Their eyes gleamed with a haunting light, unblinking, carrying the weight of stories untold. The very air shifted, thick with despair. "What are those?" Tommy cried, stepping back. "Just shadows," she replied, though her heart raced at the sight. "They couldn't be real, could they?" The laughter returned, mocking and sinister, overwhelming like a flood. "Choose wisely, children. You will all become one of us," came the voice, slithering into their minds. Jennifer clutched Tommy tighter, fighting the urge to turn and run. "We need to find an exit." But with each step forward, the shadows twisted joyfully, taking shape right before their eyes. "What will it be, Jennifer?" They taunted. Will you sacrifice your son, or will you let him go? No. She shouted, feeling her breath quicken. I want to choose between us. But the shadows grew, inching closer, and the walls began to close in. Mom. Tommy trembled, his voice now barely above a whisper. The path grew darker, wrapping around them like a snake ready to constrict its prey. One will walk out, the unseen echoed. Choose. The countdown continued, louder now, manic. Jennifer's mind thrashed in panic. Please, Tommy. We have to keep moving. Suddenly, she saw an opening to the right, glimmering faintly in the shadows. But the moment she stepped toward it, the shadows shrieked in rage. Running will cost you. They screamed, their anguished cries turning into a cacophony that threatened to shatter her resolve. Tommy looked up at her, eyes wide with determination and fright. We can't let them take us, Mom. We fight. In that moment of defiance, she felt strength bloom within her, like a small ember fighting against an unforgiving storm. She steeled herself, braving the darkness ahead, the choice looming larger than ever as they sprinted forward, leaving the clutches of pain behind. The voice whispered malevolently, your choice will seal your fate. What awaited them in that final glimmer of light? Would it bring salvation, or something far worse? Time was running out. The glimmer beckoned like a lighthouse in a storm, but hope felt heavy with dread. They rushed toward it, their hearts pounding against their ribs, an echo of the countdown still ringing in their ears. Mom, hurry. Tommy urged, his grip tightening on her hand. The opening grew larger, revealing a narrow passageway, barely illuminated by flickering shadows. It looked almost inviting, a stark contrast to the malevolence pressing in around them. But deep down, Jennifer could sense the monstrous pulse of the darkness, as if the very walls were alive, breathing in tandem with their fear. As they crossed the threshold, the air shifted. The faint whispering grew louder, words slithering through the dark like cold fingers. You escaped one fate, but opened another. What lay beyond the opening felt different. The path widened, abruptly spilling them into a vast chamber. An expanse of darkness loomed overhead, filled with shadows that danced like wraiths. In the center stood what looked like a decrepit stage illuminated by a ghostly spotlight. No, not a stage, Jennifer breathed, remembering the stories of those trapped in performances that never ended. She could almost see the outlines of a crowd, watching. Waiting. Mom. What is this place? Tommy asked, his voice trembling. An old theater, I think, she muttered, each syllable a struggle against the dread coiling within her. It felt wrong, like stepping into a memory that wasn't theirs. Suddenly, the chilling laughter returned, echoing off the walls. Welcome to the show. It boomed. 2 players, 1 victory. Jennifer's heart raced, her instincts screaming at her to flee, but where would they run? The walls were now closing in again, heavy with despair. The shadows crept toward them like a tide, dragging along the echoes of tormented souls. What do they want? Tommy whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Are they watching us? Look. Jennifer pointed to the stage. The darkness swirled, revealing figures hunched over, faces twisted in silent anguish. They weren't just shadows, these were the ones who defiled. Their hollow eyes stared blankly at Jennifer and Tommy, filled with an emptiness that chilled her to the bone. Leave while you still can. One shadow screamed in a voice that cracked and splintered through the air. But before they could respond, a clapping sound erupted, deliberate and slow, from the back of the theater. Bravo! Bravo! Taunted a figure emerging from the shadows. Its face was obscured, but she could feel its power radiating. You've made it this far. But will you make the final choice? No. Tommy shrieked, taking a step back. We won't choose anything. The figure stepped closer, its presence leaching warmth from the air. Ah, but you must. The choice you avoid will be your undoing, it hissed, each word dripping with malicious delight. Just like before, whispered the shadows, their laughter now a haunting melody. One must remain, the other can be free. Jennifer felt the weight of his despair crash over her like waves against jagged rocks. Tommy, listen to me. We need to find a way out, we can't give in. With every ounce of strength, she turned from the enthralling glow of the stage, hoping maybe there was another exit. But every time she faced the darkness, it surged forward, pulling her back like an unseen hand. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed, piercing through the silent horror. The stage splintered, breaking into shards of light that blinded with an intensity that was almost unbearable. The laughter grew to a deafening crescendo before abruptly cutting off, the weight of silence pressing in like a vice. What just happened? Tommy gasped, eyes wide with shock. The remaining shadows began to gather, their forms shifting, restless, as if sensing their moment was slipping away. Choose now, the figure whispered, now looming close enough for Jennifer to feel its cold breath. You have only moments before the shadows reclaim you. Jennifer looked at Tommy, uncertainty flickering in her chest like a weak flame. In that instant, everything slowed, and the very essence of despair clouded her thoughts. The air thickened, the last remnants of the countdown echoing once more. 3, 2. Both paths she could take plunged into indeterminate darkness. The knowledge that one of them would be left behind suffocated her. You have to choose. The figure hissed, a cruel grin spreading despite the darkness. But beneath it all, a flicker of defiance ignited within Jennifer, promising that maybe, just maybe, they could fight against the inevitable. As the lights flickered one last time, she grasped Tommy's hand tighter. No. We want to choose. We're getting out of here. And just as she turned to make a break for it, the stage erupted with piercing laughter, reverberating through the chamber. Would they find a way to escape, or was this theater only the beginning of their nightmare? The shadows seemed to gather strength, ready to strike. The stage exploded into chaos as laughter twisted into a cacophony of madness. Every corner of the vast chamber pulsed with a darkness that felt alive, shifting and slithering as if it were a creature hungry for their fear. Mom! The walls! Tommy shouted, pointing. The edges appeared to ripple, folding inward, a grotesque maw eager to swallow them whole. Run! Jennifer screamed, still clinging desperately to Tommy's hand. They dove deeper into the dark, dodging shadows that clawed at their heels. As they sprinted away from the stage, the shadows seemed to morph, coiling into grotesque shapes that loomed against the dank walls, eyes glinting with malicious glee. Fleeing only delays the inevitable. One voice lilted, thick and syrupy, echoing down the corridor like a wicked song. A narrow path opened to their right, promising escape. Taking a chance, they veered off, their breaths quickening, desperation fueling their flight. But the whispers chased them, persistent and taunting. You can't escape the choice. You're bound to the stage. The walls began to close in again. Jennifer could feel the cold sweat trickling down her back, the temperature plummeting as they pressed forward. Tommy, don't look back. She gasped, but the heavy laughter echoed in her ears, gnawing at her resolve. A dim light shimmered ahead, flickering like a hopeful star buried in their nightmare. Guided by its flicker, they stumbled into a narrow room, that smelled of damp wood and decay, a backstage area. Old stage props lay strewn about, remnants of forgotten performances and lost dreams. Mom, what's this place? Tommy asked, huddling close. I don't know. Jennifer replied, her heart thudding in her chest. She gripped a rusted metal prop that resembled a twisted crown, the edges sharp. It felt oddly powerful, weighty in her hands. But we need to find something to defend ourselves. Suddenly, ghostly figures appeared behind them, emerging from the shadows with hollow eyes, faces twisted in sorrow or rage. Why do you resist? One hissed, its voice cutting through the air like a knife. You cannot change your fate. Stay back. Jennifer warned, raising the crown, heart pounding. Strangely, she felt a connection to the object, a spark of defiance coursing through her. The shadows paused, as if sensing her shift in energy. Leave us alone. But instead, a ripple of laughter erupted, shaking the room. It doesn't matter what you wield. You cannot escape the performance. The laughter drowned her thoughts, so loud it felt like it was pulling her under. She glanced at Tommy. Had he always been so pale? We'll find a way. She promised, yet the words tasted hollow in her mouth. Then, a flicker of recognition crossed Jennifer's mind. The crown wasn't just a prop, it was an emblem of choices made, choices enforced. She thought back to the figure on the stage. There has to be a way to turn this against them. What are you going to do? Tommy whispered, eyes wide, trembling. I'm going to stand my ground. The shadows claim power through fear. If we can turn that fear into something else, maybe we can fight back. Just as she said that, the shadows lunged forward. Dark fingers clawed at her, but Jennifer held the crown firm. You want a show? Let us give them one. She yelled, channeling all her anger, all her dread into that moment. She thrust the crown toward the dark figures, and to her shock, the crown sparked with a white light, illuminating their twisted forms. The shadows recoiled, howling in anger, the laughter dying down to panicked whimpers. Now, Tommy. We have to move. She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the opposite wall that throbbed with an energy of its own. As they dashed towards it, the figures twisted and shrieked, shadows fighting the light. You cannot escape. This is only the beginning. They fell back, but their shadows reached out, grasping desperately as if trying to pull them back into the abyss. With a final surge of adrenaline, Jennifer and Tommy crashed against the wall. It gave way, spilling them into another dark corridor, leaving the chaos behind, but the laughter echoed louder than ever, seeping into their bones. Mom, what if they follow us? Tommy panted, wide-eyed and gasping. Then we'll keep running, she said, setting her jaw with determination. We won't be their puppets. Not anymore. As they entered the next corridor, the lights flickered one last time. Shadows writhed behind them, merging into a single form, darker and larger than before. You can't escape the show, it snarled, breath hot on their backs. Fear coursed through them as they realized the game had only just begun. Would they ever truly break free, or was this theater a trap from which there was no escape? Darkness swirled around them as Jennifer and Tommy pressed on, their hearts pounding like war drums. We can't stop. We're so close, Jennifer urged, clenching her son's hand. Each breath felt heavy, every step an uphill battle against the tide of shadows clawing at their heels. Mom, I don't want to play this game anymore. Tommy's voice cracked, fear twisting tight in his chest. I know, sweetheart. But we have to keep going. Don't look back. The corridor narrowed, walls creeping inward, shadows whispering menacingly. You can't escape, they taunted, voices slipping through the cracks, curling like smoke around their minds. You're part of the performance now. Suddenly, the dim light ahead illuminated a door, slightly ajar, flickering as if inviting them. Hope sparked in Jennifer's heart. That's it. We need to get to that door. As they dashed forward, they could hear the shadows roar, angry whispers laced with despair. You'll regret turning your back. But they didn't stop, pumping adrenaline pushing them through. Just as they reached the door, it swung open, revealing a flash of blinding light. Shadows shrieked as they clawed at the gleam, recoiling in fury. No. Come back. Without hesitation, Jennifer pulled Tommy through the threshold into the radiant glow. It enveloped them, a warm embrace as they stumbled into a vast room filled with shimmering lights and laughter echoing off the walls. For a moment, it felt like they had stepped into a dream. Mom. What is this place? Tommy asked, wide-eyed, gazing in wonder. Jennifer blinked, taking in vivid colors and sounds. It felt surreal after the suffocating darkness they had just escaped. I'm not sure, but it feels safe. But caution tinged her optimism. We can't let our guard down, she whispered, scanning the room for any sign of danger. Suddenly, the laughter shifted, morphing into something sinister. The lights flickered as the shadows began to seep through the edges, betraying the temporary sanctuary. Tommy gasped, clinging to her side. "They're here. We need to find out what this place is," Jennifer urged, pulling him deeper into the room. They darted past glowing figures, watching them with gleaming eyes. Some looked like the souls they had seen before, trapped in eternal performances. "Remember what the ghost said, 7 rules," Jennifer murmured, trying to recall the ominous advice. "We need to find those rules." Suddenly, a massive shadow surged from the darkness, morphing into the figure from the stage, its voice like honey mixed with poison. "Welcome, brave souls. You've made it here, but only to face your next test." In an instant, the laughter echoed ominously, deep and pulsating. The walls trembled, reality around them bending as more shadows pooled in, eyes glinting with hunger. "The first rule," the figure breathed, advancing slowly, "face your fears. Only then will you understand the choice you must make." Jennifer felt her heart flip, every instinct warning her. "We've faced enough," she shouted. "I won't let you manipulate us anymore." The shadows hissed, snaking closer, but with a newfound strength, Jennifer pushed forward, determination filling her veins. "Tommy, remember what we've learned. We can't let them control us." "Okay, Mom. We gotta show them we're not afraid," Tommy said, a wild light sparking in his gaze. They stood firm against the encroaching darkness, holding hands tightly. "We can do this together," Jennifer said. Suddenly, brighter lights flickered around them, illuminating the shadowy figures. "Face your fears," echoed around the room as they stepped forward, eyes fixed on the towering figure, a stark reminder of their struggle. With a courageous breath, Jennifer glanced into the swirling shadows, memories of lost souls flashing before her, a collage of horror intertwined with their own past, fears laid bare. "What do you want from us?" she shouted, her voice ringing with defiance. "You must choose who lives and who dies." The figure roared, shadowy tendrils spilling forth, and in that instant, a decision crystallized in her mind. "No. We choose neither. You won't take anyone." Tommy nodded fiercely, "We're not part of your show." The shadows faltered, their grip loosening as light pierced through the edges, igniting something deep within Jennifer. She felt the crown in her hand pulse with energy. "Together, we can break this cycle." With one last burst of will, they thrust the crown forward into the darkness. The energy exploded outward, shattering the hold of shadows, illuminating the room in an explosion of light. The souls trapped before them began to evaporate, their screams transformed into relieved cheers. "Together forever," they cried with joy as darkness receded, banished by the light of unity and love. In the aftermath, the shadows shrank, whimpering, as Jennifer held Tommy's hand high. "We're free," they yelled, their voices echoing triumphantly. As the sun pierced through the remnants of gloom, the old Crown Theatre stood still, its curse lifted, finally a quiet witness to its own salvation. Jennifer and Tommy breathed a breath of fresh air, basking in the warmth of the light that once felt so distant. They left the theater behind, stepping into a new day, ready to embrace life together. "Never forget, we make the choices for ourselves," Jennifer whispered to Tommy, pride swelling in her chest. "Yeah, Mom. We'll always be together," he shouted, laughter bubbling from his lips. They walked away, hand in hand, leaving the haunted shadows locked within the theater's doors, the past behind them. And now, my friends, don't let this moment slip by. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will send chills down your spine. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support, because it truly makes a difference. Flood the comments section below with your reactions, theories about the ending, and what you think will happen next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this electrifying conclusion. Make sure they know what happens in the shadows, because they might just be watching.